What's going on, my creative collective? Welcome to your July 5th creative reading, your daily creative reading. We are going to dive right on in here. First, I would like to invite the angels, my guardian angels, my spirit guides, protectors, teachers, and their healing energy to this space. And I ask that it is a safe and brave space that allows for the fullest expression of our light, humanity, ascension, and healing. So I'm going to pull from the postcards from Spirit deck here. Postcards from Spirit. Spirit, what messages do you have for my daily creatives? Oh, two, four, one. Wow. Okay, so I'm going to read the second one at the end of the reading. Sorry. My cat's like, are we playing? It's playtime, right? Yeah. No, baby girl. Nope, not yet. Not yet. Okay, so this says, you are not alone. I feel like we've gotten this one before. You are not alone. Dearest you, there are times you get lost but refuse to see your part in things. Happens to everyone. Something feels familiar but sort of off. If you're feeling confused, it's best to throw away that map you're using, which only lets you navigate based on your past experiences. That isn't what you need right now. Instead, take a deep breath and open to the truth. Seriously, take a deep breath. Do it. I'll do it too. Take a deep breath and open to the truth. A desire to stay in denial means that part of you doesn't want to be responsible for the pattern that's shown up in your life. Yes, this is the right time to wake up and start again. By the way, you will always get another chance. You have unlimited chances to start again. We love you so much. We really do. Be gentle with yourself. Coming out of denial is like being temporarily blinded by super bright lights. Allow your eyes to adjust. Carry on, special one. A beautiful life awaits. Loving you so, so much. Yeah. So it's kind of like just being honest with ourselves too, right? Like that's the hard part. That's the really hard part, right? It can be so tough. And when I often reference this about transitioning is like the fact that when I was beginning to transition, I thought, what's the one thing that if I did it in my life, I would be able to, the things that I use to stand between me and truths in my life, or me and not truths, but like me and my authentic life, right? Like authentically living as me. What are the things? And we do this with work. We can do this with friends. We can do this with shopping. We can do this with money, right? It's the nature of addiction and codependency. That's what that is, where we have these holes that are, the result of inauthenticity. And this is oversimplified. Addiction is very nuanced. So I think it's important that we don't just say, oh, addiction. And it's like, oh, sorry for the loud noise. But like, oh, addiction, it's this. And it's like, there's so many nuances. And I grew up in a home and, family lineages too. Like that was very prominent. Alcohol was very prominent. So when we talk about addiction, I think it dishonors those who are addicted. To speak to it in terms of just like this, like it's a really serious thing. But I think that is part of the nature of it, right? Watching it so much in my family, I thought to myself, what are the coping mechanisms that I use when it gets hard, right? Like even now, if I'm having a bad day, like I don't turn to things. I feel it, right? That you feel it all, because it's like it gets in the way of truth telling. But that's where I think it's like coming out of this denial is like what you're doing is making your authentic self accessible to you. And sometimes that doesn't look pretty. It's like getting to a backyard that has overgrown weeds that you haven't tended to all year because you didn't realize that you had a freaking backyard, right? But that's kind of what coming out of that sort of, denial can be like, right? And remembering that you aren't alone, remembering that you have people that you can call to help cut down all of these like monstrous weeds that grew in the backyard. There is support available and accessible to you. Four of Cups. You may not see it though. You might not see it, but that's okay because that's a starting point, right? That's an awareness of something. Even if it's not a comfortable feeling, you're feeling something. You're not denying it. You're not running away from it. So even if it feels uncomfortable or you're like, ugh, it's still something. That's something to celebrate, right? Especially when we think about how, denying our truth. And again, we're starting with these cups. We had so many cups yesterday, but when we're in the, I don't want to say business of, because that's capitalism in terms of addiction is icky. Like it's just, but when in the business of denying ourselves or our feelings, we can just turn to whatever feels best, right? Whatever, takes away the pain or addresses it in a way that removes it from us. Like it just, yeah. And that is part of opening up your heart, is being willing to go there, being willing to sit in that, right? Absolutely. And a lot of, I've seen it a lot in readings and things. And my heart hurts for those who have been addicted, just the way that it gets thrown around so easily, like at 10 years old, not 10, maybe 10, 9-ish. Like I was having to clean up my mother who had passed out from drinking, and like carrying your mother upstairs at 10 years old and cleaning her up, like that's hard. Like she and I have talked about it, and it like we can't change what happened, right? So that's the thing to keep in mind. And compassion for others starts with compassion for self, and really meeting that kid that I was, and saying like that doesn't have to be, it didn't have to be that way, and it shouldn't have been that way. But when people just throw addiction around and say like, oh, it's blah 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 blah, like it becomes it almost becomes, to me, it's like the way narcissism is used now. It's like if you don't like someone, they're a narcissist. If you don't like someone, they're an addict. And there's so many nuances to it that it's just like, wow. I mean, I hope that folks who have experienced it aren't triggered by the way that it's just thrown around so easily, right? But all of this to say, you're feeling it, and you're in the place of overcoming, right? You're in the place of overcoming it's almost like this is resistance, but it's an interesting resistance in the context of sort of facing truths that might be uncomfortable, right? Facing truths that might be uncomfortable is you're facing them, and it's almost like this is like the letdown a little bit, because you're like, oh, right. You've been wanting this Ace of Cups so badly, and you're like, wow, it's so good. But then you realize that like, you're like, oh, right, I'm in it. Like it's almost like it's not what you thought it was. So it's like the glamour is falling off, which is possibly symptomatic of the Neptune retrograde, where it's like illusions are kind of falling away. Like we're starting to see things as they are, instead of as we are or as we wanted them to be. And that's a good thing. That's a great thing, even if it's not initially amazing. Was that even a real shuffle? I don't know. Because what it's doing is giving you access to parts of yourself. It gives you access to parts of yourself that you may not have had access to before. And we have this bridging energy here with the Muse of Inspiration. So this is an additional card in this deck. This is the Muse Tarot by Chris Ann. So this is an additional card in this deck, and I love it. I see it as bridging consciousness energy, right? This is like creative consciousness. This is the consciousness that you're bridging for yourself. So it's almost like you're transmuting energy here, which is excellent. Because again, this is like meeting yourself, right? Like meeting yourself, your expectations, things to do with your heart that you were holding on to, or things that you wanted to express. But it's like you can't, it's like they're very apparent to you, very visible to you right now. So we have this bridging energy, and then we have the Ace of Wands, which is excellent because it means that this, whatever it was that was like burned off in this process, I think about it as like steam, right? Like you're boiling water and there's steam coming off. And I get the impression that you're transmuting it into something really powerful for yourself. This is inspiration. This is instinct. This isn't just instinct that's been hard earned or won by facing these truths. But I think it's like the instinct of authenticity. Like when you know yourself, when you know what you want, when you know why, when you faced down yesterday we had the Queen of Cups and the Devil come out, and what was a really sharp observation for me, and one that still resonates right now, obviously because it's coming out here, but this idea that you were always bigger than the stories that you told yourself. You were always bigger than the monsters in the closet that you made for yourself of your beliefs, right? So it's like there was always a way that you were bigger than what you thought, and you were more than capable of handling it. And I feel like that's what's like it's like channeling that energy now and putting it into either creative projects, to work, to passion. Like, this is how passion can be unlocked when we're authentic with ourselves, right? Like, I turn to it again, coming out as trans, and that, like, it was such a joy. Like, it'll be my first year this year, as it'll be a year as the world knowing me as Charlie as of July 29th. And there's so much more of my joy that became accessible when I came out. And this isn't to say that people who are closeted can't have that, because they do. And it's not, that's not how coming out works. And it's not everyone can do it, or not everyone feels comfortable doing it, which is okay too. We're not trying to limit people's experience of joy, or to delegitimize, or to sort of essentialize transness as only these things. No, but it helped give me greater access to that. So it's like that kind of energy where it's almost like a coming out of sorts, I think, but it doesn't have to be framed in that way. I'm a bit protective when people talk about coming out in that way as being the only way we can access joy. It is joyous, yes. But I know that not everyone can come out, and that's okay, right? But I feel like you're taking this energy and you're turning it into something. It's almost like I'm seeing like raw materials, one material is being alchemized into something else. So it's almost like this emotion is being alchemized into fire, right? Like this emotion is being integrated. It's being read. Oh my gosh. How is this cat so cute? It's being alchemized into joy. It's being alchemized into, you are stuck. I have to do your nails. We are going to do that after this reading. So yeah, it's like alchemy. This is the alchemical process. Creative alchemy. Spirit, what other messages do you have for my creative collective, please? Okay, so we have the Knight of Swords, the Chariot, the Page of Swords. In reverse, though? Yeah, okay. And we have the Three of Cups. That one's right side up. Okay. I read the cards intuitively. It's very easy for me to get a read on things if it's supposed to be upright or reversed, specifically in the readings it comes out. Yeah. The Emperor, the Hermit, and the Nine of Pentacles. Okay, so I'm getting that it's like you're going through this alchemical process and you're wanting to move on something quickly. Like there's like this decision you're making. The reason why I say that this is a big deal is because the Page of Swords is in reverse. So I almost feel like there's something you may not be seeing here. There's not enough, you don't have enough information to act on something. You don't have enough information to act on something. The swords to me are about patterns. They're about thought patterns and beliefs, but they're also about trust. They're trusting yourself, trusting your voice, trusting your pace as well. So you might want to move really quickly. This could become a tower if it goes unchecked or unattended to. And I feel like you could kind of cause a tower if you go too quickly or too slow. How do you find the right pace, Goldilocks? Well, the answer that I have is going within. And the Chariot is Cancerian energy, and I feel like this is Cups energy in a way as well, right? Your best momentum is not going to come from having all of the answers, but going within and doing that gut check, right? This is creative gut. This is creative gut and gut instinct. This is an emotional instinct. To me, this is about alchemizing, and these energies are coming together. You hold the strings, so you hold more power than you might believe right now. You hold more power, but there's a way that you are. There's a way that you're bringing all of this together through a recognition of something in your heart. And the Three of Cups here is the big challenge. So it could be that there are ways that you were not, I don't want to, like, this is celebratory energy. So it's interesting that it's the challenge. The reason why I'm saying that it's celebratory, I mean, this could literally mean that someone, I talked about addiction up here, and I'm thinking like it might be related, right? It could be. I just don't want to throw that in there because I feel like throwing that in there is accusatory, because if it's not also paired with resources to help people, then what am I doing, right? Am I just saying like here's substantive proof in tarot that somebody might be addicted, and I'm going to call it out, but I'm not going to give any resources and do the compassionate thing, right? So I'm just hesitant to do that. And that's, other readers do it differently, and that's totally okay. It's just a lot of the experiences that that I've had with it, I don't want to read like that and say like, let me give people something to accuse with, but then not to meet with compassion also, right? So just if that is the case for you and you are watching and you have been struggling with that, do take care of yourself through it. You're not a bad human being. You're not horrible. We all struggle with a lot of things. Addiction is different, yes. But I'm not here to accuse you. I'm not here to, to harm people with that perspective. If you are struggling with that, I see you, and I know it's hard because I've watched family members, partners, and friends go through it. So if that is the challenge, I just wanted to say that. But this could also just be a way that you're not allowing yourself to be celebrated. This is like a coming together. It's a celebratory energy. So I feel like the challenge might be letting yourself celebrate, letting the joy in, because we're starting with this Four of Cups energy, right? It's like a bit of bored energy. This is stuck energy. So it could be about allowing flow. It could be about allowing, in general, just finding ways to be in a state of joy more, right? And the overcoming energy is the Emperor here, which is this beautiful, it almost strikes me, I'm hearing the words glow up. I know Minopon Tarot talks about it a lot. But, and because he reads the cards like that well, right? But it's like, this is to me an energy of, and other, it's come up in other readers' readings lately, but it's just like this energy is really, it's one of ownership, yes, like accountability. It's like, also, if you're facing these things, like if you're facing these difficult truths, there's a way that you're alchemizing these things and becoming, you're in better command of yourself. You're in better charge of yourself. You're able to direct your energies effectively because you're not turning away from these difficult truths. The Emperor gets good and bad news. It's not just about the good things and and I'm not saying focus on the bad either, because that's not, that ain't it. But this is looking at the energies that we need to alchemize and being very honest with ourselves and knowing that we can handle it because of who we are and what we're made of, right? We're made of fire. We're made of passion. But the beautiful part is what we're made of. The Emperor is made of all of the suits of the tarot. So all of the signs. So what we're made of, we contain multitudes, right? We contain multitudes, multidimensionality. That part of you is what is going to help you get through whatever it is that's coming up. I say that the things that we're turning away from just because there's like, it's like, this is like accountability. And what does accountability look like? For some people, it can look like saying sorry. For some people, it can look like admitting to yourself that you are your own worst enemy sometimes. For some people, it can look like, oh, I really need to put away the laundry because that's not like, it's not caring to self, blah, blah, blah. For other people, it might be like, well, because I've had friends that do this and oh my gosh, I can't do this, but it's like when someone will leave the gas tank until like there's like next to nothing in it. And it's okay that they do that. But like taking accountability would be, why am I stressing myself out like that? Why, like that's what that would look like. I like to have half a tank of gas or more, always. It's like my thing. If I get to half a tank, it's too low, right? So, it's that kind of thing. It's recognizing these things, building a bit on yesterday where we were talking about loving discipline, right? Loving discipline in Saturn. And that's from Dr. Nicole LePera's book, How to Do the Work. So it's like looking at these ways of self-discipline and being honest with ourselves about what's working and what's not, right? How, I think about, I have blood pressure that's through the roof right now. It's coming back down, but it has these weird spikes that go off the charts. And I eat well for the most part. I exercise pretty regularly. But it's like doubling down on that and then looking at stressors too and being honest with myself about those things and saying like, okay, so what is it that I need to look at, and peeling back the layers and saying, okay, we're going to deal with this, right? It's being very honest with yourself, because are there going to be uncomfortable truths that come out in the process of that? Yep, absolutely. But they're not uncomfortable in a way that judges you. They're just uncomfortable because you're not being the self that you know you're capable of. The beautiful part of this is that there's like this inward hermit process. So you go within to look at the details of things, and then you come out, you're like, oh, I know how to do this so much better now, how to do this self-care differently, how to... this is like authentic confidence, not inauthentic confidence. I mean, that can't, to me, this is like not just authentic confidence and confidence coming from a strong place inside you, but this is, to me, this is about knowing who you are and being unwilling to settle for anything less than how much you've invested in yourself. Your worth, recognizing your worth, right? And that can sometimes be an uncomfortable truth, because when we recognize that, what else, like what we can't, there's so many things that just cannot exist in the light of that anymore. It just, there's so many truths that cannot be withstood or held, right? So I do want to say this though, this is a bit of an intense reading. So if you're reading this and you're like, oof, feeling a little bit triggered or upset, or anything along those lines, take care of yourself, right? Like pause, do what you need to do. Because I hope that my readings come across as helpful, and very practical and all of that. But I do want this energy to, I do hope that you're taking care of yourselves through it. Spirit, what messages do you have for my daily creatives for July 5th, please? To clarify, the Hermit, we have the 8 of Swords, the 6 of Wands, the World again from yesterday, and the 7 of Wands. Okay. There's stuff that you can't really see. It's part of a process that you've had to go through, right? It's part of a process. I'm hearing growing pain. It might be, there might be things that you have to go through as part of these lessons that you're learning, but there's a way that it's welcoming and new, because the World is a releasing, yes, but it's also the minor arcana versions, or the minor arcana reflections of this might also include the 10 of Pentacles, the 10 of Cups, 9 of Cups, the 6 of Cups, 3 of Cups, and the 6 of Wands, which we have a chunk of here. So I think we're missing the tens, but we have tens in the 6 of Cups, but we have everything else. So it's like there's this new, right? But it's like you have to let go of a way that you've been unwilling to see, because that's what this is coming across as. This is like a bit of tough love tarot today. But I feel like it's a good time, right? It's a good time. This time of year is beautiful to do work like this on yourself, because the vitamin D is really accessible if you're in, the Northern Hemisphere, right? You can go out and get sunlight. You can get vitamin D with greater ease, which helps every process related to serotonin production, right? Like it's a good time. So do take care of yourself and do things that are not just part of like this. I don't know if this is shadow work as much as it is just being honest with yourself and saying like, oof, I haven't been, my best self here. I haven't been the self that I know I can be, or, I haven't lived up to my own expectation of this. Do I need to change the expectation, or do I need to work harder at it? Right? Like making the game winnable for yourself without really allowing yourself to run away with the truth about where you're at. So Spirit, what messages do you have? We have the 4 of Cups, the 3 of Cups, and the Emperor. Yeah, 3 of Swords. I feel like there's maybe some disappointments that you are. I feel like this is like disappointed energy. Like the Emperor is an energy of transmuting, but there might be energies that you're transmuting that like you've disappointed yourself, or others have disappointed you. That could be something that you're working with as well, right? I like to make my readings more about you, right? And I focus on relationships to a certain extent, but whoops. Okay, so we have the 8 of Pentacles and the Page of Swords. I feel like this is really like, so many words are coming to mind. Okay, so part of it was like architecture, but then it was also like the minutia. Then this was also the details. This is the stuff of doing what you have to do in order to get where you need to go, right? Which is, it sounds very basic, but this is the not so pretty part sometimes, right? This is the 8 of Pentacles. But you can turn whatever it is that you're working on, or things that come up, right? This could just be like I said, it could be just a simple truth, like, oh, I wait until the creamer is like almost out. I use like an almond milk thing, but so I don't know if it's still creamer or not. But like I wait until it's almost out before I get it. Like, is that, and again, I like to have one on hand before it's out, but it's like stuff like that. Like, what is it about your day that might add stress, that might add tension, that might add things that take away your energy, right? This is where we can turn our own daily habits and routines, building on yesterday's message about loving discipline, right? We can take our own habits and routines and turn them against ourselves because we're not seeing them from a place of the Eight of Pentacles. And this may be something you just need to get more information on, right? That's how easy it is. It's not about, like, it might seem like this big, hard thing, right? This massive thing that's difficult to do, but you might just need more information about how to do it. And that helps you to take flight. Because I found that when the most stressful things that I've experienced in my life, I let them get bigger than they needed to be. I let them get bigger than they needed to be because I would say to myself, well, I don't have all the answers to that. And instead of seeing it as a process, like, it feels bigger than it is because you don't have all the information yet. You're getting there, right? So allowing yourself the grace to get the information. And that might be, I almost see this as like a healing of this. This is how you're releasing disappointment. This is how you're releasing. It's like keeping promises to yourself, right? That's from that book, from How to Do the Work, Dr. Nicole LePera, page 221. I keep referencing it. It seems to be loud in these readings this week, but it's just a Saturn thing. All right. Like, it's Saturn as a parent that's loving, as opposed to seeing Saturn as this like crusty bastard that is really like here to teach us all the hard lessons, right? Sometimes they're really loving. And I think it's like it's helping you to release disappointment in yourself, maybe in other people too, because maybe you have more power with this Emperor card here than you know. And instead of seeing us as being like limited to, this Three of Cups, like the, celebrations with others, like instead of limiting ourselves to the behaviors and actions of others, we're able to use the energy of the heart and connect to something bigger with this Ace of Wands, connect to and alchemize something bigger, so that instead of showing up with all of these expectations of other people, we're looking towards ourselves to really alchemize and work with what needs to be ironed out. Oops. Yeah, Six of Pentacles. This is like the balanced give and take. This is also boundaries with yourself and how you're giving to yourself too, right? This is also sharing spiritual knowledge. This is charitable giving, but I feel like this is like give and take. This is balance. This is reciprocity. So it's almost like reciprocity with yourself with this Aries card here, right? So far for the signs, we have Saturn and Aries, as well as Cancer. So I went over it a little bit, but not completely. But I do think that the reason why this Page of Swords is showing up in the antagonist position is because it's stuff that you're not willing to see. I think I talked about it briefly. There's like an unwillingness to see, but you are beginning to. It's like being willing to, because we have the Page of Swords twice. The one down here showed up in the upright. So to me, it's like it's being willing to see. Like there was this unwillingness, and then this is kind of the process of being willing to see. So I think it has something to do with whatever truth it is that you're facing this week, based on what I see here in the card and just different transits. I think it's just a matter of facing it head on, but allowing yourself to be in the discomfort of feelings if they come up, right? Don't run from those either, because they are very important teachers. So we have the Three of Cups. On this bridging consciousness energy and the Knight of Swords, we have the Three of Cups. Spirits, like I said, what I said. Five of Cups. Ace of Cups, Five of Swords. Yeah, I almost feel like the way that you might have been disempowering yourself here, this is a pace card, right? Like you move really quickly on something, wanting to move really quickly once you get all of the information that you need. You're like, off to the races, gone, right? You alchemize, you're like, boom, we're done. Okay. But be present in situations relating to others, because I talked about it here with this Three of Cups, right? Like where you would maybe turn to others and say, well, why isn't this working with this person? And instead of, it's like, I think about A Course in Miracles and how it talks about how at times when we think it's about one thing, it's actually something else, right? So for example, we can say that, I don't know, I think about like basic everyday stuff like dishes, right? You can say like, oh, I'm upset about the dishes being not done again, right? And this is an example. I'm the one usually, I hate dishes with the fire of 1,000 suns. It's a very strong word, but like I know it's a thing. I have to do them, right? So I do them after meals, but it's just part of my process now. But for example, someone talks about that, okay? they're like, I'm upset that the dishes aren't done. It's not about the dishes. It's about the bigger need behind it that is often reflected. Sometimes it just is about the dishes, but a lot of the time that is about somebody saying like, the dishes aren't done. But what they're actually communicating is that they feel really unimportant. If it's something that they've expressed over and over again, if they're not done it could also be like that something is like, they can feel like you're not seeing them. They can feel invisible. Like there's needs that are underlying. So I think that that's something that's happening here, where there's things that are underlying, but instead of kind of going within, it was easier just to kind of, go out with friends or turn to other people and look to the ways that other people could sort of feather that nest for us, as opposed to going within. And I feel like when you do, it may not feel the prettiest, but there's an Ace of Cups here on either side of this. Again, we're doing like this alchemical process here, right? The reasons why you may have felt like this is competitiveness, right? Like you may have been competing with the standard that you set for yourself that doesn't need to be there. It just doesn't need to be there. And it left you feeling perpetually, like in perpetuity, disappointed, because you're like, my cups are spilled. What the F, right? These 3 cups, right? 3 cups. These 3 cups were spilled. Oh, dang it. But there's 2 behind you. So it's like, it's like, the way that we set these standards for ourselves and then we aren't able to live up to them, that becomes a belief. So this emotional state of the disappointment, the not living up to standards, that emotional state becomes a belief that we carry that requires competitive address, like the way we address our needs becomes competitive by that virtue. But I think this is you understanding what's actually going on here, because Spirit is saying, here's whatever this gift represents. Here's this synchronicity. Here's this awareness. Here's this centeredness in your heart, right? That's a gift too. Here's this perspective that you have, right? Here's this gratitude, this appreciation. And it's like you're seeing it slightly differently because you're maybe seeing it with greater clarity that that's how that happens, right? That's how those 3 cups spilled. The Ace of Wands and the Chariot here. Spirit, what can you tell me about this energy for my creative collective for July 5th? The High Priestess, the Ace of Swords, the Ace of Wands, the Moon, wow, and the Chariot again. So there's a lot going on under the surface right now. Again, self-compassion is everything. I haven't listened to the, self-compassion is everything. There's a new self-healer soundboard, and I am excited to listen to it. So I would encourage that you do as well, but I haven't listened to it yet, but I'm excited because it's good stuff. So the High Priestess and the Ace of Swords here and the Ace of Wands. What does this translate to? Well, I think this is for you about this momentum, right? Like it's this way that you're moving on instinct now and you're alchemizing energy. Perfect for it to happen. It's happening because you're trusting in what is coming to you, not just intuitively, but I think emotionally too. The High Priestess, intuition to me is so connected to emotion. It's so connected to emotion. It's so powerful in that way. And I feel like the beauty of it is that when it's connected to intuition, this intuitive connection helps you to see things that you may not have been able to see before, right? These are opportunities. These are gifts from Spirit. You may be able to see truths that you have been neglecting, right? You might be able to see ideas or opportunities or passions for what they are. And that's beautiful because it unlocks this energy where they might have been under the moon before, right? They might have been invisible to you, but this too is a card of intuition. Sometimes illusions, but again, it's that clarity because the Chariot is here saying that there's a forward movement from that point forward. This is fortuitous forward movement. This isn't backwards. This isn't regression. This is forward movement. And to have the Ace of Wands twice in the same row from 2 different decks is a big deal. This is a clarification set of cards beneath, and I feel like clarifying this energy is saying that there's not a lot that you can really do wrong. So this is not just about trusting your ideas and trusting what's going on in your heart right now, but it's also about understanding that you don't need to try and get it perfect because 3-3-3-3 on the time, because you're going to get it imperfect a lot. But the point is more so to be connected to this authentic part of yourself, to be connected to this truth of yourself, this truth. Again, maybe not a huge truth, but something small it's going to make your life a lot easier. The Page of Swords tells me that it's like, it's related to finding information, seeing information, clarity. 6 of Cups. Justice, yeah. It's almost like a return to innocence. Judgment. Four of Wands. Wow. And the wheel on the bottom. Dang. Okay. So it's like this return to innocence. It's you're returning to this innocent view of yourself. Maybe I do need to watch that self-compassion episode, like post haste. But it's like this way that you are, these complicated truths live in all of us, right? All of us have complicated truths. All of us hold paradoxes upon paradoxes within us, where some people might say, well, that is ridiculous. How can that possibly be true because of this and this and this and this and this? But it just is true, right? You don't need to justify it or explain it away. And that can be the thing that maybe you're seeing, is that you don't have to justify. Like, I'm talking about habits and things like that and the granularity of things here, but it could just as easily be that you don't need to explain yourself. You don't need to give people all of the information about, like, the Page of Swords. Like, you know, people don't need to approach you with the expectation that you will give them everything as though they are a student of you, like who you are. How do I word this? Not if you're in a teaching position, that's one thing, but it's like if people show up at your doorstep and start to like poke and prod and say, well, why did you do that? 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 Why? If there are people that mean something to you, then that's fine, but you don't have to justify your existence. So it can be truths like that represent that Aries, that first house boundaries, right? It can be those things as well. So the Six of Cups and Justice and Pluto, to me, this is really about, it really is about a return to innocence, right? There's integrity here. So I tend to think of the Justice card as being inside integrity with oneself. And I think that's sort of the transformation here. It's this return to innocence, seeing yourself through the eyes of spirit with Judgment, right? Judgment represents Pluto energy, but it's also, I think it's Gabriel calling the dead back to heaven after they've passed, right? I think it's a Judgment Day thing, but it's like this sort of back to innocence, this return to that, and this transformation of how you see yourself as inside integrity and how you can articulate yourself in that way, right? That is a form of power. It's a quiet power, and it's also something I think that is bringing a greater sense of stability and expansion to your life. This also represents relationships. So if we were to look exclusively through the lens of relationship, let's say you're coming here with that, I would say that there might be truths about the relationship or the configuration thereof that you're looking at, that you're better able to look at the details of the everyday life with somebody if you live with them. If you're in a relationship, it's articulating your needs. It can be articulating, saying like, I like when you touch me this way. I like when we do these things together. I like when we spend this kind of time together. I'm trying to think of the 5 love languages, right? I appreciate when you do this for me. I appreciate when I receive this gift or this kind of gift, like all of the 5 love languages. But it is really holding all of these different complex, holding space for the paradox is going to be really important, because that's the place of compassion within that allows the complexity of truths and the vulnerability that they bring. Because when we articulate truths, not just to ourselves, but to others, what we're also saying is, please don't hurt this part of me that I've shared with you. We don't have to, see people exclusively through the lens of broken like that. But I look at it as an offering. Someone is bringing an offering to us when we get into these spaces. We don't always know when people are bringing offerings, but I think this is more of a conscious conversation. This is intentionality for sure. This is definite intentionality. So I feel like this is you bringing a lot to the table in conversations. With the amount of swords here, I feel like there's it's emotionally infused conversation. The pentacles, they're not as intense, but there's also more major arcana towards the end of this. So I would also say just temper your fire. If you have fire in your chart in prominent placements, temper your fire a little bit, because what you're reaching for is not, I don't like to look at it through compromise, right? We're looking at, does somebody's truth feel honored? How do we honor ourselves and others when we are holding these complex truths? How do we turn them into relationship instincts? How do we turn them into creative instincts, to intuitive instinct? How do we see people in their truths? Just that process alone, sometimes that is the need, right? That is the need. To use the dishes example, someone might say, I know that you hate dishes or whatever. I don't know. I've just like, one of those, it's like a Saturn thing. Like I'm like, ugh, I know I have to do it. So I just do it. Right. But it's like, if somebody were to say, you could say like, I know that you don't like the dishes being left. And I'm hearing more that it's based on this than it is about the dishes alone. Is that a fair reading of that situation? Is that a fair reading of this for you? Like, it's a totally different approach than saying like, fine, I'll do the dishes, because what you're saying is that it's like, in that moment, that reaction, the thing gets done, but does that person really feel seen and heard? And that's where it's being very cautious and respectful of this Three of Cups when we come together with others. This is a celebration card more so, but again, I read the cards intuitively. So it's like, when that happens, are we recognizing the whole thing of a person to be celebrated, or that would otherwise be celebrated? Or are we fragmenting the cups into this Four of Cups energy of boredom, of not seeing things that seem very obvious to other people, right? So are we fragmenting ourselves in our relationships and making it difficult for us to meet with this new, because there's so much new here. There's a lot of new as well. This could be a new approach with the Ace of Cups, a new relationship approach, a new way of connecting with others, approaching people's needs. On teams, they have 5 love languages for work too, right? So it's like, how do people feel appreciated, and meeting them there, understanding that people may have needs that they want to be met at work or on projects or even in their business. Business owners have this too, right? Like, business owners have needs that they want to be met too. Granted, it's more on them. The onus is on them because they chose to go into that field, like, on their own. But it's also like, there's certain things that we all have ways that we can meet others in these ways that honor them. And I think that is really, really important right now. So we also have, I'm going to pull from the Life Loves You deck by Louise Hay and Robert Holden. Spirit, what messages do you have for my creative collective for July 5th, please? I release the need to control my life. It's a delicate balance, right? Surrender and knowing what to take accountability for. I release the need to control my life. But this is part of it, the vulnerability. So when we allow other people to express their needs, when we meet them, somebody can be upset about whatever it is that we're not doing, right? The specifics. Someone can be upset about the specifics, but it is a vulnerable making thing to say, oh, I realize that I'm hurting you by doing this thing, which is such a minor thing, right? Because we're not also putting our happiness in other people's hands, but it's about meeting someone and saying, oh, I recognize that I can be doing this completely differently. That's vulnerable because that's intimacy, right? That's going deep. That's going deep with someone where you're like, oh, right. This is how you want to be seen. And doing that thing is meeting someone in an intimate way. That's emotional intimacy. I mean, that's part of it. But, right. And that's where you have to release control, because somebody could reject you if you listen, if you do the things that if you honor them, then they could reject you, right? So that's vulnerable making, and it can be a really passive aggressive thing when people do stuff like leaving dishes or whatever. It's such a common thing, and I've read it so freaking much, and it's like I turn to it the most, but it's like that kind of thing. It's like, when you do that and you meet someone, they can reject your efforts, right? And so you're showing up vulnerable by going into that and going deep into that. So if you're not sure that they're going to meet that energy, it's a release of control. So what you control the most causes you the most pain. Breathe in, breathe out, and let go of trying to control your life. And that's a big deal in relationships and even on projects, right? Because sometimes I've read it before that when people are late for things, it's actually a passive aggressive form of control, where we're trying to control something. We're trying to control, some aspect of other people's experience or things like that, or even attention. And so we show up late to do that. And it's an unconscious thing. But if we were to just show up in general, then our need to get attention, to be at the forefront. I'm not sure how else it could express, but like that need needs to get met in an authentic way, as opposed to the way that we show up in that behavior. So it's like this sort of releasing control. I listen to the wisdom of my heart. Yes, even the stuff in your heart that is anxiety causing is worth listening to, because if you neglect to see it that way, the anxiety in other people will not be something you want to listen to either. And that is, again, emotional intimacy and authenticity too. Because then when you show up authentically, it frees other people to show up authentically. And because you're listening to what's going on inside, you can then articulate that clearly to other people. It doesn't make them responsible for anything. It just means that you know where you're at. And you can ask curious questions that bring you together in relationship, as opposed to behaving in ways that might break apart otherwise, right? So I'll read the back. Place your hand over your heart. Ask your heart what it wants you to know today, right? What do you want me to know today? And I know co-regulation, you can do this with a partner, right? Like you can put your hand like on their chest and they can put their hand on yours and say like, what is it that your heart needs me to know? It sounds so cheesy, but honestly, like, it's the foundational stuff, and that's the safety building things that you can do in relationships that make them so damn rich, because you can see one another clearly. I'm going to pull from the Miracles Now deck. I'm going to pull one card, and then I'm going to read the other postcard from Spirit. I don't need to find my purpose. My purpose will find me. And that can be about like your needs will get met, right? It can be a fear of not having your purpose as in your needs, right? Like the purpose of conflict is to meet your needs. And then what? There has to be a resolution, right? So it's like looking at the purpose for things. And if we're doing that, the purpose of that conflict, the vulnerability that you're sinking into, your needs will get met. So it's not about fearing that. So I'm going to read this card to you here. So the back says, celebrate life. Okay, so celebrate life. Dear you, uncertainty is the new normal for the whole world. Things are changing at a rapid pace, and the old ways we once trusted are no longer reliable. It's about vulnerability. Oh my gosh, this is amazing. But leaving the familiar behind can be a good thing. When you are pushed to step into the unknown, you are pulled forward into discovering new possibilities that have been hidden in plain sight. Check in with your higher power. Your soul knows better than your small self. Wow, especially with the Queen of Cups and Devil yesterday. Dang. Your soul knows better than your small self. Have faith in the support for a higher power and the infinite potential for your life. Right now, the advice we have for you is this. Try something new. Do something different. You won't know how it feels, what it looks like, or what the outcome will be if you do not take that first step into the unknown and experience the unfamiliarity. You'll be so glad you did, because the treasure will appear. We're so proud of you for being brave. You are so loved and so supported. Gorgeous. Ugh, love that. Okay, so I'm going to leave it here, my darlings. This is a beautiful reading. A lot going on here, but the message is really clear. Like, this is about showing up. This week we're showing up not just for ourselves, but for other people. So that is an intimacy with life that we all need, right? So I'm going to leave it here. If this resonated, please like and subscribe. I'd love to have you on the channel if you are not already. Thank you so much for showing up and watching. If you're from my subscriber base, thank you so much. I really appreciate you. You can't see the smile on my face, but it's huge. So thank you so much for that. There are other ways you can connect with me on the channel. But if this is where we leave it, I hope that wherever this finds you on the time-space continuum, morning, afternoon, or night, it finds you very well, my lovelies. Take care and have a great day.